My name is Portia. I'm 28. I live in Greenville, Mississippi, and I'm a training coordinator.
My name is Byron. I'm 36 years old. I'm a professional detailer. Yeah, I love cars.
I'm getting married March the 19th at the Washington County Convention Center in Greenville, Mississippi.
Move! What the answer phone? Come on, baby. Going to jail tomorrow. Y'all think I'm playing? I'm going to jail. Stop! Don't walk off!
I will stop at nothing to get what I want.
Oh, boo-hoo. Let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin.
Hello everyone, it is the Afro Avenger here with another album review, and today's album is Death of a Bachelor by Panic at the Disco. It was released January 15th of this year, 2016. Some chart information: it peaked number 1 on the US Billboard 200, US Billboard Top Rock Anthems, and US Billboard Top Alternative Albums. The number 1s straight through. It was released on the label Fueled by Ramen, which is Panic at the Disco's home label, and DCD2. Its singles were Hallelujah, Victorious, and Emperor's New Clothes. So without further ado, let's get this started. This album is a pretty crazy one, actually. It speaks on a lot of different things, which may or may not cause it to lose its cohesiveness. However, the music one here is really diverse, blending several different styles of music for a highly varied LP. Being that Brendon Urie is the only remaining member of the band Panic at the Disco, he now has complete creative control over the act's music and what he chooses to do with it. Not only that, but he played the majority of the instruments on this album: guitar, bass, synthesizers, piano, drums, drum machine, and pretty much everything but the horns on certain tracks. Really impressive work, to say the least. One all-encompassing theme of this album is really just Brendon Urie recounting sections of his life. It's kind of like a musical memoir up to the present, really. Various parties he's been to, his marriage, his feelings about being in control of his music, what the media has said of him, and his spirituality. All of it wrapped into this 11-track album. The opening track is Victorious, which is actually quite different from the majority of the rest of the album. It's essentially Brendon saying that you can do anything you put your mind to and to live like a champion whenever you can. This track is much more rock pop influences, as is Don't Threaten Me with a Good Time, the following track. However, Don't Threaten Me with a Good Time, which is about Brendon saying that the crazy times at parties are the best times and shouldn't be taken negatively or as a warning, is really our first taste of what most of the album will be like, highly jazz lounge influenced. Brendon Urie has stated that Frank Sinatra was a huge part of his childhood. At Christmas time, when his folks were showing him how to dance, etc., he shows a lot of that influence on this album. Many of the tracks here see Brendon as more of a crooner, blending styles like hip-hop, jazz, rock, swing, and pop, creating a fusion of them called neo-swing. As I stated already, Brendon expresses his spirituality a little bit on this album through Hallelujah, which is basically about owning up to making mistakes in life and accepting the fact that we do make mistakes, in other words, sinning. As you would probably expect, it has a bit of a gospel influence, with Brendon doing an incredible job overdubbing his voice a whole bunch of times in order to give it the effect of a gospel choir singing, kind of like what Queen did on hits like Somebody to Love. Really cool track. Now, one track I especially enjoyed was Emperor's New Clothes. It stood out above all the other tracks, probably having the most left-field sound stylistically compared to everything else on here. Continuity-wise, it picks up where the title track of Panic's last album, This Is Gospel, left off, according to the music video anyways, which is really freaking cool, by the way. Anyways, this track has a ton of hip-hop influence in it, from the classic hip-hop drum pattern down to the dark, gritty beat itself, not to mention the outstanding vocal work by Brendon on this track. So impressive, really. I would probably say this is the best track on the album, in fact, but that's debatable. I would say around this point, the middle of the album was the best section in terms of music. This is where most of the jazz, neo-swing, hip-hop stuff comes in. The title track, Death of a Bachelor, and Crazy Equals Genius are the best examples of this. Brendon has said of the title track that it's like blending Frank Sinatra with Beyonce, and I can really see that. The beat is so fire, and he blends this cool lounge singer vocal style over a clearly trap-influenced hip-hop beat. It speaks on how Brendon has been struggling with the married life with his wife, I might butcher this name, Sarah Orzakowski, getting used to everything and dealing with the stress, which he apparently hasn't been dealing with very well. Moving on, we have the track Crazy Equals Genius, which is probably the most straight jazz-influenced track on the album with its blaring horns, crazy drums, and the heavy swing style. One thing I found really cool about this track is the name-dropping of Beach Boys members Brian Wilson, Mike Love, and Dennis Wilson. Any of you that know anything about me probably know that the Beach Boys are like my favorite band next to the Beatles, and hearing that analogy and comparisons between them and Brendon Urie was really intriguing. I can't go into deep detail about the mythology surrounding the Beach Boys. That's for another video. But essentially a girl, perhaps his wife, is telling Urie that he's just like Mike Wilson, but he wants to be both Brian and Dennis Wilson. It took me a while to process exactly what that means, but Brian Wilson is considered a musical genius, and Dennis Wilson has also been touted as an incredible musician later in his career, albeit he died very young. Brendon wants to be like them, and what's interesting is that Brendon, Brian, and Dennis have all majorly struggled with drugs. Drugs caused Brian to develop mental illness, and aside from his total left-brain experimentation on earlier mid-60s albums like Pet Sounds and Smile, he in a way went crazy from his extreme drug use, yet he's still considered a genius for his musical contributions. Mike Love, on the other hand, often regarded as the villain of music for not being in favor of the Beach Boys' early experimentation, is sorta kinda the only remaining founder of the Beach Boys. Not completely true, since there's also David Marks, but since Brian's brothers Carl and Dennis are dead, and Al Jardine and Bruce Johnston weren't founders of the band, and Brian Wilson himself is touring with his very own band, and Brendon is the only remaining original member of Panic! At the Disco, so putting that all together, Brendon is like Mike Love in that he's the last member of the original band, but he wants to be like Brian and Dennis Wilson, who are both considered geniuses in their own right, but they were both more or less crazy. I know that was a really long explanation, but the Beach Boys are such a fun and interesting band to talk about, and the myth behind the music is so cool, and this level of comparison really had me thinking about what exactly Brendon was trying to say, considering how complex the members of the Beach Boys were in their character and personalities. I really dig this track a lot, and that just adds on to it. Now, after this track, the album kind of reverts back to more of a pop rock style with tracks like LA Devotee, which is kind of an anthem to the stereotypical Los Angeles female native, Golden Days, which is about reminiscing on the old days, of course, and The Good, the Bad, and the Dirty, which is Brendon speaking on things like members of the band coming and leaving, how the media has portrayed him, and standing up for what you believe in. All pretty cool tracks, but not really as interesting or as varied as the tracks like Emperor's New Clothes, the title track, or Crazy Equals Genius. The penultimate track, House of Memories, takes things a bit deeper, where Brendon is questioning his marriage, suggesting that it was only built on memories and not what's right now. It has some cool EDM influences with nice synths, but wasn't particularly an amazing track in my eyes. Not bad at all, because the theme is certainly there, and around the 2 minute mark, there was a really cool beat change that really added a lot to the track musically, but it wasn't as cool sounding as some of the other tracks. The instrumentals felt rather uninspired and very pop cliche. The final track on the album, Impossible Year, goes back to what Brendon was doing with the whole Frank Sinatra stuff, and actually sounds like a Frank Sinatra song. You can hear the suave swagger and his crooning vocal style with that nice, smooth lounge instrumental in the background. He's talking about how the past year, 2015, was really crazy, almost unbelievable. A lot of negative stuff went on with Panic! At the Disco, breaking up, with him being the only member, having to deal with trying to fill in spots in the group that weren't working out, and just generally not being in a very good place in life. It's a very sad ending to this album, but seems almost fitting, really. The juxtaposition between the smooth, savory instrumentals and the dark, depressing lyrics make for a great end to the album. Nothing explosive, but like a nice, simple cherry on top. Overall, I really like this album. I thought it was a great listen, not long at all, and each track has something a bit different to offer. However, there were only a couple of arcing themes from track to track, and that was mostly how he's the only remaining member of the band left. Really, only that idea carried over several tracks, while many of the other tracks were about one thing that was totally different from another one. Of course, as I stated, this album is like a musical memoir of Brendon's life up to this point, and he's talking about a whole bunch of different things that have been going on, so really, the theme is that this is his life. Nothing wrong with that at all, and whether or not you think this album is cohesive or not is honestly up to the listener. I thought it was in that aspect, but musically it's kind of all over the place, going from pop rock to hip hop to neo swing to back to pop rock, and then back to jazz at the end. It never stays with one style for very long, and one track kind of hints the style that will be in the following track, but only for about half of the album. Disregarding the cohesiveness though, I thought the music was great, really fun and cool with some music that feels classic, while some other music that you can rock out to, and other bits that bump at the whip. My favorite tracks were Hallelujah, Emperor's New Clothes, the title track Death of a Bachelor, Crazy Equals Genius, LA Devotee, and Impossible Year. I have to give it up to Brendon for dealing with the struggle of losing his band members, but being able to pull off a really solid album all by himself. I recommend this album to anyone who's into pop rock, hip-hop, jazz, lounge jazz, swing, neo-swing, and pop punk. Well, that does it for this review. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you did enjoy, please hit that like button and also subscribe if you want to see more. And if there is a song or an album that you want to see reviewed on this channel, leave a comment down below or check out my Facebook or my Twitter. The links are in the description. But that does it for this video. Thank you all again for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. So long.